Afshin Nazir, and I work with the African Forum and Network on Debt and Development, AFRODAD. Today, I'm here to express my sentiments on why I think the House of Fiscal Wisdom, HFW, is not only timely, but also important. Number one, we are just coming from the Financing for Development process, which has concluded in July in Seville. And from that process, countries have committed to establishing an intergovernmental process on debt that will close gaps in the debt architecture. HFW provides the academic viewpoint to closing those gaps in the debt architecture. Now, the debt architecture is dominated by creditor-centric debt governance, and in order to do that, we have to dismantle the IMF and the World Bank and create institutions that are more relevant to modern-day needs. The second reason why I think HFW is important is African scholarship. Much of the literature around debt, around economics, is dominated by Western scholars, and it's time to bring African scholarship to the fore.
Hello everyone, my name is Leila Latif. I am one of the directors of the House of Fiscal Wisdom. The other director is Professor Atia Waris. And we're here at the AFRODAD Conference on Debt and Development in the beautiful Accra, as you can see from the background, the former founding father of Pan-Africanism, Kwame Nkrumah. We're here to discuss and speak about the House of Fiscal Wisdom and why this is an important institution. It is the alternative that's going to sit here for purposes of now dismantling the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These conversations are very important. And with me, I have an excellent member of the House of Fiscal Wisdom, Leonard Wanyama, who is the director of the East Africa Tax and Governance Network, doing amazing work, powerful work, bringing about the discussions on tax justice. And I just want to understand from you, Leonard, why do you think it is important to have an alternative institution that speaks that stands as a relevant body that's going to be able to fight against the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank?
Thank you, Laila. It's important to have alternative spaces on thought leadership, knowledge production, in relation to the numerous struggles we have in public finance management. The House of Fiscal Wisdom is obviously very welcome in joining this fight, in helping introduce new ideas, new thinking, new experiences that will help us dismantle that dominance of Eurocentric thinking, but it will also help us contextualize and provide very much needed knowledge and research to tackle a lot of the challenges that African countries are faced today.
So when you say African countries are faced with challenges, could you just give me an indication about what kind of challenges do you think are core to the continent's fight?
So if you think about the global financial architecture, there are questions about tax sovereignty, questions about the debt burden, questions about climate resolve and the decision making that should be taken in terms of getting the right environmental standards to facilitate dignified livelihood for Africans and people in the global south. These are some of just the simple conversations that are happening globally, and the way to engage them is based on a lot of the research, particularly coming not only from alternative perspectives, but also in the sense of researching and documenting real life experiences that are needed in terms of placing our arguments on the global space.
I love that. So I just want to ask you one last question. You talked about the importance of knowledge sharing, and we're currently in a big space here. You see a lot of civil society movements who are advocating for a lot of policy in terms of climate change impacts, the problem of debt, the challenge and the proliferation we have on illicit financial flows.
Yeah.
What would you say makes the House of Fiscal Wisdom different from this entire beautiful, huge civil society space?
I think one of the biggest things I can say that makes it unique is that it's a women-led organization, and particularly it's not so common to find that it's women led by two PhDs in a very niche space of taxation. And so you realize that as a country, as a region, there are very few highly technical experts, particularly in the subject of taxation. And that will inform a lot of the other connecting public finance conversations. And not only that, they also kind of peripheral governance questions that are related to that. And so there is a wonderful nucleus to its origins, but it also links up very well to a lot of very many variants that we come across in the development space.
I love that there's a wonderful appeal to the nucleus. That word is really important. I think what distinguishes us from the rest of the civil society space is that we're focusing on scholarship, and that is knowledge generation that Leonard spoke about, which is really important because it is a scholarship that then goes ahead to inform the work of policy advocacy that civil society does. And I think the most important nucleus, to use Leonard's word again, for the House of Fiscal Wisdom is that we are setting up the Global Commission on Financing Development. So read up on the Global Commission. Thank you.
You know, Africa has a history of colonialism, and colonialism is a struggle that continues to date. We're still struggling with understanding how to design our tax systems, how to figure out how to finance our socio-economic development needs, how to trade cross borders, how to diplomatically agree on taxation rights between sovereign states. These conversations today are yet rooted in colonial hegemonic circles, and we are not able to really break away from them. So it's really important as African scholars, as African thinkers, that we figure out what are the alternatives that could be strong enough to tackle the issue of colonialism, because colonialism stays and it endures and it perpetuates the flaring up of more institutions and more economic thinkers who are designing the economy for us, who are telling us what our fiscal systems should look like, and who are setting out for us the principles of good governance. But none of these are contextualized in, for example, the philosophy of Pan-Africanism, as was enumerated by Kwame Nkrumah. There's so many African scholars on the continent whose voice is not shaping the discussions in dismantling colonial institutions and the reconstruction or the construction itself of alternatives to these colonial orders that we have. So the House of Fiscal Wisdom, the vision is very simple. We need to have alternatives, strong alternatives that center Southern voices to deconstruct the problem of colonialism that we have and how far we can go about that.
As a practitioner in the human rights and democracy space, I am excited to see the launch of House of Fiscal Wisdom, which is central to producing key evidence that interlinks human rights and public debt management. As you can see in the architecture of many constitutions across the globe, public finance is central to the realization of these human rights. In reference to the Kenya's constitution, the socio-economic rights are enshrined in the constitution, and as well, the journey to realize this involves electing good leaders or accountable leaders that can oversee accountable administration of public finance in a way that when we tax citizens, we are able to replicate that in form of provision of healthcare, education, and other things that protect the human rights. So we understand the centrality of public finance management in realization of human rights. At the moment, governments are prioritizing debt repayments over provision of basic services. For instance, in Kenya, we have observed a situation where government failed to pay public servants in efforts of trying to meet the demands of the lenders. As we launch the House of Fiscal Wisdom, we continue to express the desire to have more evidence that continue to anchor the centrality of human rights in administration of public finances. At Forum C, we are ready to support these efforts by continuing to push for principles that anchor democracy and anchor human rights in the administration of the public finance. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Otieno Harrison, and I am a researcher at Aphrodite. And today, on this particular day, I welcome you to the launch of House of Fiscal Wisdom. House of Fiscal Wisdom is launching the Commission for Financing Development, where we seek to have conversations on the global financial architecture. And we are pushing for a global financial architecture that is equitable, that is justifiable, and that is fair to each and everyone. Therefore, we welcome researchers, we welcome thinkers, and we welcome writers who are eager to join us in this journey. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Atia Waris. I'm a professor of fiscal law and policy at the University of Nairobi in Kenya, and I am the executive director of the House of Fiscal Wisdom. And we have launched our African launch today here in Accra, Ghana, the home of Kwame Nkrumah. And we are very excited because we are the first ever Southern think tank headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, that are going to be commenting on the international financial architecture. And we are going to be bringing together thinkers, professors, and academics from around the world to get them to have conversations on different elements of finance and climate and health and gender, so that we can make sure that when financial conversations are taking place at a global level, they reflect a truly developing country, inclusive, fair, equitable, just system always. We are delighted and look forward to all of you joining us on this incredible journey. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, and I'm so glad I was able to pull you out of these fascinating conversations happening around AFCOD. Wenson, you're an award-winning journalist, and it's such a privilege to just have you here with us to talk about the House of Fiscal Wisdom. I just wanted to understand from you, right, in the line of work that you do, I'm sure you've seen a lot of challenges that the continent faces, a lot of issues around illicit financial flows, and also challenges around debt. And I just want to ask you to give me your perspective in the sense of, with these challenges that we see, it's a problem of institutions, and our institutions keep failing us. So if you could talk a little bit about why we have bad institutions, and what would an institution like the House of Fiscal Wisdom, what does it need to do to try and break away these challenges that we see on the continent?
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. And I think it's such a pleasure to be able to, be part and parcel of the launch, of this important institution. And I'd like to start it off from one of the challenges that I've noticed, as a journalist reporting on business debt issues, from my country and across the African continent is, as you rightly put it, the issue of the lack of the institutional framework. And when you talk about other challenges such as the, illicit financial flows and everything, the issue of capacity then arises. And looking at the era where we are, where Africans are beginning to realize the importance of, fiscal sovereignty, fiscal autonomy, in order to claim or chart the course of the future that we want, it's very, very important that this gap that has to do with the institutional framework, that would be key in building capacity among African governments to navigate issues to do with fiscal governance. The House of Fiscal Wisdom, in my opinion, feels that important gap because for so long, we've allowed other people to give us diagnostics that may not even understand exactly the real issues that we have. That they will give you diagnostics that are based on their interest and not necessarily what it is that needs to be looked at in order to give you a solution. So the House of Fiscal Wisdom comes or promises, for me, I see hope with this institution where we're going to have finally an institution that will help in terms of giving capacity to African fiscal administrators so that we can get to a place where we can also have the right diagnostics of the problems that we're going through and the possible solutions that we can embark on.
I mean, that's a beautiful way to put it. That hope, I think that's what we're looking for. The hope to having hopeful institutions to revamp fiscal governance in the continent so that we take back our fiscal sovereignty. Thank you so much. It's been amazing.
Thank you very much.